Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Jenna Wood, and I am one of the dietitians here with the Giant Company. Welcome if you are new to our classes, or welcome back if you're one of our regulars. Today's class, so Mondays, we typically do a meal solutions class. So a meal you can get on the table fairly quickly without a lot of prep. This one I'm hoping I can get the whole thing finished by the end of class. There's a lot of moving parts, but I'm going to do my best to get at least some version of it on my plate so I can show you by the end of class. But our topic for our meal solutions class this month is around the concept of better for you favorites. So a recipe you really love, maybe you get it out at a restaurant frequently, but we're just going to make it a little better for you. We're not going to healthify every single thing we make. That doesn't make any sense. But we're just going to make it a little bit better for you. So today's class, we are making turkey and veggie meatballs. And these are a really fun, kind of lightened up version. So instead of beef, pork, veal you may find in regular meatballs, we're going to do ground turkey, which it calls for 2 pounds. And I don't know, I saw both our ground turkey and our ground chicken, so I'm going to do a medley of that since a lot of meatballs have a medley of two different ground meats typically. And then it's going to have a lot of chopped up veggies inside, a little bit of fiber from some bread. So lightened up in some ways, but it's still going to have that delicious meatball taste. So I know this is a lot on a page. Of course, we always send the recipe and the link directly to the recipe on Giant or Martin's. But the recipe is quite simple, and I'm going to show you all of the steps. And then while they're cooking, I have just a couple slides to share that I learned about making meatballs. So first, we're going to have 4 pieces of whole wheat bread with the crust cut off. So I already did that part. A third of a cup of low-fat milk, whatever kind of milk you use. We're going to do a 12-ounce bag of frozen broccoli that's been thawed and drained. So that's an important piece. You can quickly have too much liquid in your meatballs as well. Half of a 10-ounce package of like the box chopped frozen spinach. So half of it. Keep that other half for the next time you want to make the recipe. 2 pounds of 93% lean ground turkey and or chicken. I'm realizing I did like completely fat-free, so we're going to see how this goes. A cup of grated parm, 2 eggs. And then however you want to serve this, whether you want to have it on a meatball sub or you want to have it, I don't know why I said sub, I say hoagies, a meatball hoagie. If you want to have it just on top of pasta with sauce, if you want to have it over more veggies like cauliflower rice, there are so many options. If you just want to have it with sauce and bread, there are so many options to eat these. If we have time, I'm just going to serve it with some sauce to kind of show you. I love meatballs with sauce. So that is what we are going to do. Recipe is super simple. I'm going to talk through it as we are making it. So I'm going to stop sharing for right now. And then I'm going to spotlight my other video here. Let us see. Okay, so what we are going to do, make sure I'm close enough I can see the whole recipe. So I did already drain and thaw, of course, some of those steps. So I'm going to do the broccoli florets. So this is the 12-ounce bag. It is the steam ready. You obviously don't have to steam it in the microwave. We're just letting it defrost. I set it out on my counter like 2 hours ago and it was still a little frozen. So I did pop it in the microwave for like 30 seconds. So I already have that, the 12-ounce bag. Then I did half of that cube of frozen spinach. And I did let it drain. This is my favorite little colander, but it's been draining in the sink for like at least a half hour to try to get any of the excess moisture out. So what we're gonna do, hopefully you could see my other camera, move everything out of my way. Well, we're going to take a food processor. This is like my Ninja version of that. You know, I love Ninja. Into our food processor, I'm going to add all of those veggies. So all of the spinach. Whew, and we're going to process them pretty tiny so that, you know, even the pickiest vegetable haters in your family hopefully will like them. And it's just going to add a bunch of moisture and, of course, all the vitamins and fiber and things we get from our veggies. Any reason to cut the crust off? That is a really great question. I don't know. I don't know if it's just because that's a little tougher. I will say I used the crust, so they're not going to waste, and I'll show you what I did with them. But yeah, it doesn't really specify no crusts. You probably could leave them in. But I think since we're not grinding up the bread. We're literally working it with our hands. I think maybe it would just be too big or too tough because we're using whole wheat bread. So that could be a piece of it as well. And I will show you. I'm just, whew, I almost made you fall over. I am using just our, on the shelf giant whole wheat bread. I have not done anything with the bread yet other than soaking it in milk, which I will show you. But first, in the food processor, it says to pulse the broccoli and the spinach 10 to 12 times until it's finely chopped. So we're going to see how that goes. You probably could just cut it on a cutting board if you don't have a food processor. I'm sure that would work fine. But you want to get it pretty chopped. You'll probably want some sort of spatula or something to push it down against those blades. You probably don't want huge, I mean, I wouldn't mind huge chunks of broccoli, but I could see that not being super appealing to people who don't like it. I'm sure these will have some green flecks throughout anyway. Yep, you're gonna have to just kind of smush it around. Okay. This is probably the most labor-intensive part of the whole recipe. The rest, you're literally just molding everything together. All right, couple more pulses. If you have a regular food processor, this might take less time. I'm going to keep doing it just a little bit longer. I actually think if you were to steam the broccoli for not a long time, not as long as like the whole recipe calls for, but I think that would help break up some of those stems, even though this does call for broccoli florets, so there should not be a lot of stems. There are a couple that are sneaking in there. So one or two more times, and then I'm going to call it. Good enough for me. Move this out of our way. And then I'm going to put all of our veggies into our bowl here. Into our bowl. Of course, the ones on the bottom are nice and chopped. Okay. These are going to be a lot of meatballs. What I love this recipe, you probably could cut it in half, but I do think the ratio of things, like then you'd have to do half of the bag of broccoli and a quarter of the bag of the spinach. So the idea of this recipe is you can have some for tonight's dinner and then they freeze really well. So I'm going to throw on some gloves because I don't love working with raw meat products without gloves, especially for class, because we're going to be moving around doing a lot of stuff. So I've got the broccoli and the spinach all pulsed up in here. If you see any big chunks that you don't want in there, you can obviously pick them out. And I'm just going to do that with a couple for now. Okay, so then into this, we are going to add basically everything else. So the recipe calls for just 2 eggs. So I'm going to add them right in. Of course, there's a piece of the shell. So we're going to grab that. 2 eggs. And I will show you the bread, of course. Then it calls for 2 pounds of the lean ground turkey or chicken. So as I mentioned, I'm going to do one of both. So this is our ground turkey breast. Of course, the recipe called for 93%, so you could do any type. Hopefully it's not going to be too low fat. Come on. Hard to get open. Don't make fun of me. No. We're just going to stab it. Okay. This looks nice. All right. So in goes the turkey, but not the paper. There's the turkey. And then here is the ground chicken breast. So one of each. You can do both turkey, probably do both chicken. I'm sure this will work with beef or pork or whatever you want to do, but we are lightening it up just a little. Okay, so take that paper off too. Set this aside all the way over there. Okay. So then we're going to add in our Parmesan cheese and our soaked bread. So I'm going to take this glove off and change them really quickly, but I will show you. I did already measure out just a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. Perfect. Then this is the milk-soaked bread. I have some slides about why milk-soaked bread might be better. You probably could do breadcrumbs if that's what you have. We'll talk about it after the recipe is cooking. So we're going to throw these right in here. So it's the 4 slices of bread with the crust cut off, and I think a third of a cup of low-fat milk, whatever milk. All right, then we're going to add a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt, which the bread's going to have salt. The cheese has a little salt, so not too much. All right, new glove. We're just going to work all of this together. Okay. This is looking a little strange. All right, be hands deep in here. So the bread has been soaking for about, I want to say 10 minutes. That's what I saw on a couple websites that recommended like how long to soak it for. So that's what I did. Right. We don't want to overwork it, but we definitely want to get the eggs all mixed in. Yeah, you're definitely going to see the broccoli and the spinach. So it might be something to slowly introduce to the pickier eaters. But we're going to cook them. So hopefully they'll get a nice kind of crust on them. All right. So, oh, there's the egg yolk. Okay. This actually looks quite nice. I was a little bit concerned about how the bread would mix in, but it mixed in very nice. Just kind of going and making sure all of the bread pieces are worked in. Yeah. All right. Yeah, they're definitely going to be green. I've never made this recipe before, so I wasn't sure how green they were going to look, but all right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just use another pair of gloves. I'm sorry. I am going to show you, we're going to roll them. It says 2 tablespoon portions. They're your meatballs, however big or small you want your meatballs to be. That's what you can do. I'm going to try making some in the air fryer to see if I can get them to cook a little bit faster so that we can see the finished product together. The recipe calls for baking them, of course, in a 375-degree oven for about 22 minutes. It's raw chicken and ground turkey. So the internal temperature, you're going to want to be 165. That's for raw chicken turkey. That's what you want. Ground beef, it's about 160, so not that much lower. So we are going to temp them, of course, before we eat them, either way. But I want to see if I can get them cooked. I did find another recipe online that recommended in the air fryer at 450, so a little bit higher. So we're going to just babysit them. 450 for, how many minutes? I want to double check really quickly. Let's see. Oh goodness, why won't it let me? Here we go. Oh no, excuse me, 400 degrees. That's not too bad. 400 for 7 minutes. So the recipe says 2 tablespoon portions. I found these the other day. I have 1/8 of a cup measuring cup, which is 2 tablespoons. So that's perfect. If you don't have one, again, you can just eyeball whatever size meatball you want. But I'm going to do the 1/8 of a cup. I'm going to do, let's see. They look good. I'm excited to eat them. Okay, so we're going to do, and they are nice and soft. I know some people don't like the word moist, but they are, they are moist. All right. It says to kind of roll them smooth. I don't really love perfectly smooth meatballs. I don't know. I want them to be a little rustic. So that one's a little bit bigger. Okay. All right. Come on. Hard to get out of the measuring spoon. Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm just going to roll these 4. I think that looks like a good portion. And I am going to pop them in the air fryer and see how they turn out. So I'm going to show you. And you could really make that batter probably ahead of time. I wouldn't make it so far ahead of time. You know, the bread might kind of swell a little more, but I think they look really nice. You probably could make these into like burger patties too. I think that would be really good. Just a little spray, especially since I got the like really, really lean little spray. I'm gonna pop them in my air fryer. Let's see, I said 400 for about 7 minutes. It did say to what's it called? Rotate them or flip them. So we're just again going to babysit that and kind of see how they turn out. In the meantime, I am going to get, let me see. I think I answered that. Can I omit the cheese or should I add something in its place? I feel like you probably wouldn't want to omit it entirely since it is a full cup of cheese. I'm wondering if you could do, I'd have to think about it. Like you could probably use nutritional yeast as like a cheese alternative. And it has a similar consistency. I wouldn't do a full cup though, because it's a lot of nutritional yeast. Maybe nutritional yeast with some like ground up cashews or something, or you probably could do breadcrumbs. It's going to be a lot of bread. So maybe, you know, I'd have to think about how else to kind of change it. But I'm sure there are ways to completely alleviate or, you know, cut out the cheese. How is the noise from Ninja so quiet? Good question. So a lot of times what Zoom will do is it will quiet whatever loud noises are happening near the camera. So it is still quiet, but you probably didn't hear it at all. Awesome. So let's see. Do you freeze a bunch of meatballs if making a batch? Absolutely. We are going to freeze them. And yes, hopefully my hope is, I mean, granted, I'm the one who's eating them. If we're, you know, tossing them in a pasta sauce or something, like hopefully the sauce will help mask some of that. Oh, somebody asked what nutritional yeast is. I actually have some. I don't see it in my cabinet right in the front, so I'm not going to go searching. Nutritional yeast is like a cheese alternative. It is a type of yeast that's been deactivated, dried. It has a cheesy, kind of nacho cheesy taste to it. A lot of vegans or people who don't do dairy use it as a cheese alternative. I love it. Some people don't. I think it's delicious. All right, let's get back to our slides really quickly. I think we're gonna like just be on time for getting our meatballs out of the oven. So, and actually, hopefully, or if I can I'm not going to unpin the video for right now because I'm going to show you. Let's see. So that's our recipe again, which we will send out. If you're baking them, I would just put them on a sheet pan with some parchment and then bake them. And it recommends rotating or flipping them halfway through as well. I think they just look so pretty. So what about using milk soaked bread? So I will say, I don't think I've ever used milk soaked bread in a recipe like meatballs or meatloaf. I typically use breadcrumbs. Both work, but a lot of really great meatball recipes call for bread instead. And it's kind of a hotly contested thing, like which one you should use. And bread is often the winner. And this is a word I have never heard of before, but if you've ever used milk-soaked bread in a recipe for meatloaf meatballs, this is something called a panade. At least that's how I think I would pronounce it, which is, and I found this on the Spruce Eats, but they say a panade is a mixture of bread and milk combined to kind of form a paste. So we let the bread soak in that milk. And they were very clear that it kind of had to be milk or a milk alternative that had some protein because that protein piece was very important in creating this paste. Water really won't work. And it's so that the end product doesn't get too dry, too hard when you cook them, especially since we're using such a low fat product. It's very possible that we're going to not have a lot of moisture because fat also has moisture and kind of keeps things moist. So cooking ground meat, the proteins within the meat contract. So moisture and things will squeeze out. So if you've ever, and I did this yesterday, we made these little kofta burgers. They were like this big when I first made them, and they definitely shrunk. And that has to do with the protein structure. If you add a starch, especially a starch that is absorbing liquid, it's going to expand and form a gel, which can help keep the final product a little bit just nicer overall. So definitely, I like learning about the background of why foods do the things they do. And this is the reason for the milk-soaked bread in this recipe. And I believe this is a savory meatloaf recipe that uses bread, I believe. The next piece. So I knew somebody would ask about the crusts, and I thought about that too. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with it? I don't want to throw it out in the backyard because we have a lot of wild animals, and like a squirrel would be fine, but I don't want other things necessarily getting it, and the dog can't eat it. So what am I going to do with the, crusts of this bread? So of course, again, if you don't have bread, you'll have breadcrumbs. You certainly could use breadcrumbs in this recipe as well. The ratio will kind of depend on the size of bread. So typically a slice of bread yields about a third to a half a cup of breadcrumbs. I would probably assume the smaller the bread, obviously closer to that third of a cup. Again, it's just going to depend. I would kind of keep an eyeball. You don't want the mixture to be too dry or too wet. Now, you want to use up the end, like the butt and the crusts of the bread. So what I did, and I will show you in a moment, you can use this, like let's say you also have stale bread. My favorite thing to use stale bread for is obviously French toast. But if you have some stale bread and you're in need of breadcrumbs or want to make breadcrumbs, certainly it makes great breadcrumbs. If you have fresh bread but need those breadcrumbs now, like let's say I had the fresh bread I was using for this recipe, I'm cutting off those ends, the crusts, and I don't want them to go to waste, but the bread is not stale. What you can do is dry it out in the oven or the air fryer. I put in the air fryer. And I've found a couple recipes. Some say to dry it out and then pulse it. Some say you can pulse it fresh and then dry it out in the oven. My personal opinion, I think it's easier to put the whole crusts or a whole piece of bread in the toaster or in the oven instead of the already pulsed up crumbs. So that was my method. I dried them out in the oven, not as long as I should have, I will say. Even when they feel like they're dry, do it for like another minute, not till it's burnt, but until it's definitely dry. And then let them cool, and then you're going to pulse them in your food processor blender. I put them right in that same blender I made everything else in. Of course, you can keep them plain. It's going to taste like plain breadcrumbs. It does probably still have salt if you're using a bread that has salt. It may even have some seasoning if the bread did. But you can then add your own seasoning, herbs, spices. A lot of like Italian breadcrumbs will have Romano cheese. So you can certainly doctor up your breadcrumbs to be whatever you would like. I did see some things recommend definitely storing in an airtight container. Some things mentioned freezing the breadcrumbs. So that's certainly something you can do too. And of course, if you don't want to use breadcrumbs, you can do, this thing's yelling at me. You can do, cracker crumbs, crushed potato chips, which definitely would add some fat to the very lean meatballs we're making. Tortilla chips, pretzels. I've used pretzels before, and that is super delicious. But let us see how the meatballs turned out. That was 7 minutes. I forgot to flip them. It should be okay. Let us see. They look so good. All right, hold on. Let's see if you can see my other camera. They don't look as good for you as they do in person, but they look so good. All right, I have my food thermometer. Let us see. Whew, it's getting hot in my kitchen. Okay, let's check her out. Nope. Nope. So they are not done. They're at like 1:30. So we still need a little time. I am going to flip them at this point. I think these are going to be so good. Oh my goodness. Like, I don't know if you can see, like, a little bit crunchy. That looks delicious. I'm going to flip them. This thing, the paper for the air fryer, it does help keep it really nice and clean. But sometimes if you don't have enough weight on like the outside of the paper, it like folds it a little. So you got to kind of watch that. But all right, I'm going to stick them in for, I want to say another maybe 3 minutes. Okay. All right. I love this air fryer, but like you have to always reset it. Okay. So we have about 5 minutes. I'm probably not going to have time to toss them in the pasta sauce. But that is my plan. I will send a picture, of course, at the end of class to kind of just showcase what that will look like. But they look so, so good. And I'm very excited to give them a try. Someone said they make similar with feta cheese, spinach, and they make them as patties. That sounds delicious too. You certainly could do feta might be a little bit, it has a little bit more moisture than a Parmesan, but that still sounds delicious. Let's see. Yes, the Parmesan definitely is going to add a lot of flavor, but there may be some ways to tweak it for sure. Would oat milk work? It's a great question. It might. It might, because you're only doing a third of a cup of it anyway. The Spruce Eats did talk about like the protein in the milk being important with the whole gelatinization. It might still, because oat milk is going to have some thickeners and things most likely, so it could work. I don't see why not. My recommendation is typically like unsweetened plain soy milk or the pea protein milk, but yeah, it's a third of a cup. It's not anything excessive. Someone said they leave their crust on. Oh, let me show you before we hang up. So these are the breadcrumbs I made. Look at them. So this is just from the 4 ends that we cut off. Like it is like I am so excited to use this. It looks so good. And this again, like I have a couple pieces of bread in my fridge. So I don't use bread all the time. It's just not my go-to carb. But the breadcrumbs are so perfect. And they smell so great. So yeah, I toasted the bread in the air fryer for like 5 minutes and then pulsed it right in the food processor. So easy. Someone said they use standard cut oatmeal in place of breadcrumbs. That would work too. That would be perfect. Like a instant or old fashioned would both be great. Yeah, so a lot of people are saying they just leave that crust right on. So you certainly could leave the crust on. I would just make sure, like I see pieces of, I guess, parts of the crust I didn't fully get off in the mixture. You just want to make sure you work that in so it's not like a big chunk of bread right in there. Oh, can you make homemade croutons with the crusts? I've made homemade croutons just slicing up a piece of bread. So certainly you could just maybe cut the crusts into tiny pieces. Yeah, that would be great as croutons. Let's see. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how they turn out in the air fryer. Of course, you can't cook as many at a time, but I cook like frozen meatballs right in there, and they're always really great. The air fryer paper, and my grandmother gave it to me. I'm not sure where she got it. It's probably online somewhere, but I think we may have a version. If it's not in the kitchen section in our stores, it may be hanging on a rack in some stores. Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning about meatballs. I will be sure to send a finished product photo in our recap email, but I, as always, appreciate you. They're done. I'm going to check the temp again. 165 is what you would want the ground turkey or ground chicken to be. But I will see you, I think my next class is Friday, but we have many classes before then. I will see you next time. Have a good one.